بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون ما يأتيهم من ذكر من ربهم محدث إلا استمعوه وهم يلعبون لاهية قلوبهم وأسروا النجوى الذين ظلموا هل هذا إلا بشر مثلكم أفتأتون السحر وأنتم تبصرون صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. In the short gathering that we have, we can't do justice in going over the tafsir of the Quran. However, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to benefit from whatever little we hear and say, and make it a means of us attaching ourselves to the Quran in the month of Ramadan, outside the month of Ramadan, and try to understand these, the surahs and the meanings of the Quran also for the remaining of our life. Allahumma ameen. In our Taraweeh Salah today, we covered the 17th juz. The 17th juz had entire Surah al Ambiya and also Surah al Hajj. Surah al Ambiya, as we know, is a Makki surah, and generally the theme and subject in a Makki surah is regarding Tawheed and also Risalat, prophethood of prophets, especially our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the concept of Qiyamah, Jannat and Jahannam, Akhirat. So a similar theme has been mentioned in this Surah al Ambiya as well, in the beginning of the 17th juz. In Surah Taha, Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was told that innani ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqimi salata li dhikri. That the message of oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the message of believing in one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was given to Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. However, now in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He emphasizes that this message was not only for Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, who received this revelation, received this message, rather all the Anbiya, all the prophets as well, were given the similar message that we only believe in one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was given to all the messengers and also all the other prophets. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a mention of this in this surah as well. Like this, in this surah, as we learn by the name of the surah, Surah al Ambiya. The meaning of Anbiya is prophets. So in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned the stories of several prophets, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge of everything that is in the heavens and in the earth. Therefore, we should only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and regard Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only as our helper. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is our one that when we worship, and He is the one that who has the complete knowledge of whatever is in the heavens and also in the earth. Like this, the mushrikeen of the Makkah al-Mukarramah at that time, they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and objected, and they rejected the message that was given to them by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and made several objections, such as that the prophet that should be sent to us should be an angel, not a human being. That the messenger that comes to us, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to send a messenger, then He should choose an angel instead of a human being. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given an answer also in this surah as well. In ayat number 7, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا قَبْلَكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That before you, O Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have sent many Anbiya, many prophets, and these were only men to whom that we reveal revelations to. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given an answer here that they were human beings and there were men amongst us. Now it makes more sense that if somebody has come to you as a message and is telling you to do something, it's more easier for us to understand them if they are on our level, especially when they are same creation as us. They are a human like us, and it's easier for us to understand the message from that person. Like if an angel comes to us, then what they will say, that this is an angel. He doesn't have any needs. He doesn't need to sleep. He doesn't need to drink. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the next verse that وَمَا جَعَلْنَاهُمْ جَسَدًا لَا يَأْكُلُونَ الطَّعَامَ وَمَا كَانُوا خَالِدِينَ. that we have not made these Anbiya and the Prophets, their bodies to be such that they don't need to eat and they don't need to live forever. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here that we have chosen the Prophets to be human beings and men amongst you. Why? Because you can recognize them. You can understand their language. You know them from before. It's not a stranger who has come to you, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the beginning of this surah. Now in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first 40 verses especially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken about His greatness, and answers to the doubts of the questions of the mushrikeen regarding Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam itself, and also the message of Tawheed in the first 40 verses. And for example, that we just mentioned of that Anbiya, the prophets should be angels, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given an answer to this in the beginning. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in verse number 22, He says that لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. Very simple. Imagine in one world, if there were many gods, then having many gods, it will cause chaos and it will cause problems. Why? One God will decide this, the other God will decide no rain today, the other God will say no, it's sunny today, and there will be a conflict between them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that had there been any other gods besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the whole world would be ruined. Trying to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one. He's got the authority and He's the ruler, and everything goes according to His wish and His command. And this makes more sense that, one person driving the car, it will go in that direction correctly. Two people try to drive one car, it will never work. It never go in the correct direction. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to give us the correct, and trying to understand. And one point just to make mention of, that we hear that there's around 80 surahs, Makki surahs. Now in most of, in them, we hear about Tawheed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He draws a message about Tawheed in different levels, in different understanding, different messages, different methods, different examples to make us understand. Why? Because everybody has different types of understanding, different levels of understanding. Some are such that immediately they understand, some are moderate minds that they need to take a bit of time to understand, and some take longer. So therefore the message of Tawheed and the Risalat and Jannat, Jahannam and Akhirat has been brought into the Quran in many different ways for our own benefit. Now, after mentioning the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Before that, وَنَضَعُ الْمَوَازِينَ الْقِسْطِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a mention of that the day of judgment will take place, where the mizan and the scale will be put in place. Everything will be weighed. فَلَا تُظَلْمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا. No oppression. Nobody will be oppressed in any way at all. Whatever action that you have done, you will see the result of the action, no matter how small it is. That's why they say never think low or less of a small action, of small good action. Why? That small good action will also be put into that scale on that day. And also a sin, it's only a minor sin, it's only a small sin, it's only a small pain that I've given to somebody, but that small pain will also be in the scale on that day. So every little action that we do, everything will see the result of on the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not oppress anybody. Then in the next ruku, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, again where he gave da'wat and spoke to his people about worshipping the idols. And what did they say? قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا آبَاءَنَا لَهَا عَابِدِينَ. This is what we found our forefathers doing. We say that my father is doing this, my brother is doing this, so that's what we're doing as well. So our actions have a greater impact than our words on our children and our surroundings. So never say one thing to the child and do another. So always be the practical model of what we are going to propagate. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give myself the correct understanding of doing this, that where we say what we do, we do what we are saying. So in that way, so the people said that, look, we found our forefathers worshipping these idols, so that's what we say. Then Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, music, logic and understanding of these idols, they don't even eat and drink and cannot even do anything, and you're worshipping these, the ones that you have carved yourself. So Ibrahim ﷺ took the chance one day of breaking the idols, and when they returned from their festival and they swore that everything was broken except the one main one, Ibrahim ﷺ was summoned and called, who did this? And he said that, why don't you ask this big idol in the middle? Obviously they knew that this idol couldn't speak. And then moving on, then Ibrahim ﷺ was given the punishment of thrown into the fire. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the control of every single thing. The fire can only burn if the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. However, here, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told that the fire should not burn Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Lut alayhi salatu wasalam, Ishaq alayhi salatu wasalam, and also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken about the story of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, how he was given certain knowledge and certain skill. One thing that we can also learn from here is that the prophets, most of them earned their living through their own hard work. It wasn't just click of a button and see the stock market going up and down and I'm getting free easy money. No, they did the hard work, the physical work they did. That's what we learned, that this is a sunnat and the method and the legacy of the Ambiya, that you physically do something, go and do something, do work, businesses and all etc. and do all other things. That's what the prophets did. Then we have the story of Hazrat Nuh alayhi salatu wassalam. We have the story of Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam. وَذَنُّونِ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَى, where we know the story of Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam leaving the place, his own hometown, and he ended up into the stomach of the fish, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that in the darkness of this fish, Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that La ilaha illa anta subhanak inni kuntu min al-zalimin. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. This is the dua that we read, that we want to also be rescued from distress. The way Yunus ﷺ was rescued from distress at that time, if we want to be rescued from distress, we should also make the habit of reciting La ilaha illa anta subhanak inni kuntu min al-zalimin. And one way that we have to practice on is that when we make dua, using the duas of the Quran Sharif, the Rabbanas and the duas like this, it is easier and it is more likely that they are going to be accepted. Why? Because they have already been tried and tested by the Ambiya. The Anbiya and the Prophets have mentioned and used these words of dua in their du'as, and they've been accepted. So this means that when we also use those words in our dua, it will be heard by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. If you want to be rescued from distress, as many people have these mental health issues and etc., the more you recite the Quran Sharif, the easier will become for us to be stable and mentally especially, and spiritually as well, and will be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more stable and level will be at in our health as well. So this is one dua that we can take from dua. When the next ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions about Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam. إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ لَا تَذَرُنِي فَرْدًا وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ. Yesterday we also mentioned that in beginning of Surah to Maryam, we mentioned that the method of making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by humbling ourselves. One lesson that we learn from this dua here, رَبِّ لَا تَذَرُنِي فَرْدًا وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ, where Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam made dua that, "Oh my Rabb, do not leave me childless when you are the best of the one who gives success, the one who provides successors. That do not leave me childless." It was old age, and he made this dua. Now, what dua that method that and lesson that we learn from this dua is that our dua should not be about only the worldly matters. That, "Oh Allah, give me wealth, give me money, give me house, and give me a car, and give me this." No, our dua should be for the hereafter. He's asking for children so that he can be benefiting from the hereafter and also benefiting the ummah. So our dua should be such that we are looking towards the akhirat, not just the worldly matters and the worldly benefit only. Rather, our focus towards be Allah subhanahu to the benefiting the ummah and also for our own benefit in the hereafter. Then we have the Surah al Hajj. Surah al Hajj itself is one of the surah, as we have the 5 pillars of Islam. We don't have any Surah al-Siyam or Surah al-Salah, Surah al-Iman, but there is only one from the 5 pillars of Islam where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has dedicated the entire surah to Surah al-Hajj. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He continues the topic to previously about Qiyamah at the beginning of this surah as well. Now this Surah al-Hajj, one beautiful thing of this surah is that some verses are Makki surahs, i.e. revealed before migration. Some verses are Madani surahs, i.e. revealed after migration. Some verses of this surah were revealed in the daytime, some were revealed in the nighttime, some were revealed while Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in a battle or maybe at home. So this surah has a mixture of different methods of revelation of the ayats and the surahs. So this is one of the beautiful thing of this surah as well. Now in this Surah al-Hajj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken about the Qiyamah at the beginning. Thereafter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned about Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam again. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, great individual, especially for this ummah. It plays a great role in our legacy, in our teachings, and the core message of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, wherever we hear, is only about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about tawheed, and also not to dilute our beliefs with other religions. Pure beliefs that we should have. We shouldn't compromise our beliefs with others, compromise our practices with others. Lakum dinukum waliya deen. That your practices and your deen is with yourselves, and our practices, our deen with ourselves. Not following the concept that's coming in the world about merging different religions together. That's not how the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi wasallam was. Rather, Ibrahim alayhi wasallam was tawheed and your deen, and that you need to follow. Now here, Ibrahim alayhi wasallam is given a couple of commands in the ruku number 4. Ibrahim makan al-bayt is about told to build this house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also keeping this house clean for those who will come for tawaf and those who will come to stand in around the Kaaba area. Then he told that وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ يَأْتُوكَ رِجَالًا. Here Ibrahim alayhi wasallam is told to make an announcement. Now at such a time where some people written in the commentary that Jabal Qubais, Abi Qubais, that this was a mountain where now the king's palaces are built in Makkah al-Mukarramah on the Bab al-Marwa side. This is where the mountain was. That he was told to stand on top of this mountain and give this announcement of people calling people towards Hajj. Now maybe there were only few people there, or maybe there was nobody there. But Ibrahim alayhi wasallam, with a little voice, low tone, is told to make this announcement. So he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that my voice is low, there's nobody here, what should I do? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him that your task is to just deliver, my task is to make it reach to others. So he made the announcement of calling people towards Hajj, and the announcement was not only heard with those who were individuals on the earth, rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this announcement be heard by those who are in the world of souls, alim arwah. So all those souls who are in the world of souls, they also heard this announcement. Now whosoever said labbaik, to the number of times they said labbaik, it will be possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow that person to come to Makkah al-Mukarramah for Hajj and Umrah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us one of those who said labbaik many times, that we will be able to visit the Haramain Sharifain inshallah in our lives. So this one lesson that we learn from this, concluding on this, is look at the ikhlas of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Look at the sincerity of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, that the message is given then, but the benefit is coming upon generations after generations after generations. That we still continue to benefit from that announcement that he made many years ago. Like this, do not always think that my message is not heard by anybody. That when you're going to knock on somebody's door, or when we're standing up for ta'aleem, or to make an announcement for gasht, and we're making that announcement that after namaz we sit for a short while for the fikr of the deen, do not think that nobody's hearing this message. Why? If we are sincere in our words, that word that we are uttering, it may be only little voice that could only be heard by few people, and maybe few people will only sit. But inshallah, if you are sincere, the message will be heard by others all around the world. And the benefit of this will not be only for our children, the benefit will continue till the day of judgment. As Rasulullah ﷺ was doing the harkat in Makkah al-Mukarramah, and the benefit is coming in, and you can see the benefit of this in Madinatul Munawwara, that when he arrives, there's also already an environment and atmosphere of Islam in Madinatul Munawwara. So this is what we take from here, is that we need to bring ikhlas in our hearts. We need to bring that taqwa in our hearts, as we learn in the next one or two pages. But that taqwa is what is required by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not of shedding the blood. That's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see. He wants to see how conscious you are. The more conscious you are of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you will respect and honor the marks of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the masajid, the Quran, the Ka'batullah itself. So when you have this consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will honor and respect these areas as well. So this is one of the messages that we learn from this Surah al-Hajj. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to benefit from this. Then in the last one or two verses at the end, the rukus at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again has mentioned about Tawheed, giving different explanation about Tawheed. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the true Tawheed that we require, and give us the ability to understand the messages of the Quran, and allow us to make use of the remaining days and moments of the month of Ramadan. Allahumma ameen. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة ما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Inshallah, the brothers are kindly requested to wash their hands and go to the, inshallah, the madrasa hall. Brothers have been doing all effort through all afternoon, preparing food for us, inshallah. We will also keep them happy as well. Jazakallah.